Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our training camp live show from here at the University of Kansas Training Complex. But our show is brought to you by the incredible people at Community America. Ask them about Chiefs checking, and you'll see your favorite quarterback on some of their stuff. Mitch Holthus with you, voice of the Chiefs, along with Matt McMullen. And Matt, you know when training camp's rolling in earnest, when you don't know what day of the week it is or what the date is, it's just rolling.
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this. I thought it was Saturday a few days ago. Apparently it's Wednesday today, and here we are out here. But that's the grind of camp. That's what we love about it. Every single day, no days off, getting better every day. And you and I are feeling that too, not just the players. I think it's Wednesday. We're rolling.
Got a great show for you. We're going to hear from Andy Reid. We'll have an exclusive interview with Tano Passanio. He's had a great start to this camp. We will look at our focus group of the day, the defensive tackles in specific, in a group that last year made big strides. But sometimes, and we're going to get to Coach Reid, he's going to talk about the injury report, and sometimes we always talk about who missed, but the exciting news of this day, we'll let Coach Reid tell you, is who's back. But the Chiefs Kingdom will be excited to see some guys back on the field today.
Definitely. Great to see some of those guys out here, and like you said, we'll let Coach Reid go over that. But Mitch, for me, back in pads, kind of a longer practice here today, 2 hours and 15 minutes. And for me, today was kind of like the second checkpoint of this camp so far. So let's back it up. Maybe Friday is that first checkpoint. That was the first day in pads. Go pads Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then Monday was a bit of a lighter day, 10-10-10, then Players' Day off yesterday. And the question was, who is going to take those days and still stay mentally sharp? Who's going to attack those days and make sure with this time crunch that we have here, they're not taking those days off mentally? And I think we saw it out here today. Guys were sharp, guys were focused, guys were crisp. And that's great to see, especially as we're heading into probably the most tough part of camp here right now.
Yeah, the legs were back. You could see with several guys in today's camp. And you know it's camp and you know it's live when you get a gust of wind coming from the Missouri River at about 50 knots. But that's okay. The ship is sailing. This, to me, is interesting you say, because to me this starts the grind, and people wanted to know, gosh, with the COVID pandemic and the league and the NFL and the NFLPA setting the rules of how you're going to approach it, when you saw it kind of laid out, you saw these 6 days basically in a row, 3 in pads, and it's an interesting, you say it's the second checkpoint, but to me this is the start of the next part of this grind. It's start of the grind right now.
Yeah, the question was, when you get those first 3 days in pads, that's the first time you've been in pads in 6 months. That's just getting used to football, acclimated to football again. Well, you had those few days off physically. Now you're back out here really starting this grind. This is real training camp out here. We're seeing guys several days in a row in pads. Your bodies are sore. How are you physically and mentally responding? Are you looking fast? Are you looking energized? And also, are you looking sharp and focused? And so far, we've seen a lot of that out here. I think that will separate the teams that find success early on in the season between the teams that do not. And luckily for the Chiefs, I think there'll be a team that has that success because they're looking good so far in this tough portion of camp.
There have been some immediate obstacles here for this team in this phase of camp, but we'll get into that later in the show with our 5 observations. Again, we are awaiting Coach Reid, who will address the media here very shortly, and you will get it along with everybody else first. Actually, you'll get it first here on the show. But I was impressed overall today, too, with the defense. We saw the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, with an interception, but we saw Ben Neiman with an interception. Mm-hmm. We're going to get into this in the show. We're going to ask Tano Passanio about it, about how defensively the next step for this team is to become more explosive defensively. We saw glimpses of that today.
And I think the pass rush is another area where this team can really improve this year. And today, Tano Passanio, like you said, looked really good. Looked fast and with a burst off the line of scrimmage, which you love to see that. And also Alex Okafor, which is kicking butt out there today. Looked really good. Excited about him, having him back. We've talked about him in previous shows. Misses the latter half of the season last year, but now is coming back. He was at times this team's best pass rusher last season. And now I think we're seeing that he hasn't lost a step at all out here in practice. He's looking like one of the team's best pass rushers. Really excited for Alex Okafor.
Some new guys picked up by the team today. One new old guy, Marcus Kemp, who last year in the preseason, we highlighted him. I mean, he had a great preseason camp, and then he unfortunately had the injury. But he's back on the team right now, and I mean, you could tell he was a team favorite. He made a big catch, and the team erupted as he did it.
That might have been the catch of camp so far. Incredible catch. I mean, how about Marcus Kemp? First day you're out here, back with your old buddies, and you go up and make a leaping grab and fall on your back for it was almost a touchdown. If it wasn't, it was at the 1 yard line. So really great to see Marcus Kemp out here. Hasn't missed a step at all. Looking really good in this wide receiver core.
We're just seconds away. We're going to pick up head coach Andy Reid, and now let's go to the podium.
Was it Thornhill was back out there, and so. On a limited basis, we gave him some work, and we're just going to gradually ramp him up. Frank Clark is ill; he's got a virus that he's trying to just shake here. So we're working with him on that, and then Chris Jones has a slight strain in his groin, along with Pringle with a hamstring. But really, for the most part, everybody got out there and worked and did a good job with it. Some of the guys that didn't obviously were Thornhill and Noddy. They were both out there today, and Keys was out there doing some work too. So, and then Hamilton was limited on the work that he did. So it was good to get the guys back out and going. Hard day of practice today. A lot of hours spent. I thought the guys did a nice job. The news of having fans in the stands, 22% capacity will be in there. And I just think that's a tremendous thing for our city here on moving forward. And just like the team and us getting together, there's going to be a certain discipline that's going to need to take place with the fans. I know they'll be ready to do that as they already have been. And then my hat goes off to Mark Donovan and his crew for the job they did of getting things prepared, checking with the specialists and experts that are involved with it, and really giving our fans an opportunity to, on a limited basis, to get themselves back in the stadium and continue to work ourselves to getting back to normalcy in due time here. So, but again, it's a good first step. So with that, time's yours.
Let's go to Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Andy, how you doing?
Doing good, Adam. Thank you.
Good. Hey, I know you guys have known about a possible suspension for Bashad Breeland, but the news came down today. I just wanted to ask you how you feel about your depth at corner to be able to handle that, and whether any young guys have caught your eye, and also just maybe elaborate a little bit on how good it is to have Thornhill back.
Yeah, so it's good to have Thornhill back. He was limited today, Adam, but he'll keep ramping up. He sure had a good couple workouts prior to being activated again there. So we think that's a plus. As far as the young corners, we'll see. Time will tell here as we go, but we've got a good nucleus of guys, and it'll all sort out here in the next couple of weeks. And everybody's working hard and getting a lot of reps, which is good. And we should be fine there.
Let's go to Sam Mellinger. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Andy. Good to see you. I know we ask you about these spectacular throws that your quarterback makes all the time, but I'm wondering if there's plays where sort of the ball's in the air and other people are kind of waiting with bated breath. Is it going to be caught? And you're sort of like the baseball hitter that knows it's over the fence and you know that it's going to be caught. Like, I'm just wondering if you've seen it enough to be able to predict it like that.
Yeah. Well, I have seen it, and my advantage is I know where the guys are going and kind of what the secondary is doing. So I can normally tell when it leaves his hand whether it's good or bad, and I trust him because he's got tremendous vision and he makes good decisions. So he's not going to do something to hurt the team by throwing interceptions. I mean, that's just not his deal. So he when he moves, he's aware of what's going on, what the situation is of the game, which all become important, down and distance, and obviously field position. Time's yours. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Let's go to Sam McDowell. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Andy. When you guys, when you talked with Brett and his group about this offseason, it seems like to get this roster back, it required cooperation from the players as well, at least a few guys, especially financially. What gave you guys confidence you would get that cooperation? What do you feel like it reveals about your group that you did?
Yeah, well, It's a good thing that we were able to get him back. You never know going into the offseason how that's going to work out. But obviously, guys wanted to be here. But at the same time, Clark Hunt gave Brett the opportunity to go get the guys. And I thought that was, that was important. And Brett and his crew, I thought, just did a heck of a job with it. And then there's a want to. The guys, they want to be here, and they know they have an opportunity to, with hard work and working through the process, to be a good football team.
Let's go to Sarin Petro. Go ahead, Sarin.
Coach, I'm curious, you were talking about how you know the routes and where it's going, and maybe the throws are a little bit more predictable for you, but you're obviously, and I think you've discussed it, and Patrick's even said, 2, 3, 4 years from now, when he really has it all down, he in that one LeBron James show, he talked about being able to see the whole field and how Peyton Manning and Tom Brady have those reactions. But he is evolving, right, as he comes along. So do you have to evolve with him? Do you, like, instead of maybe a play that has one option on where you want to go, do you have more, more plays that give him more options and put more on him as he progresses? Yeah.
So I hate telling you this, but I'm not sure we have one play that has one option. So it's normally there's three of them, and anytime there's three, it's it obviously keeps pressure on the defense as long as you're reading it the right way, and normally is good versus just about everything. So. That's Pat's got a good feel on that. He reads quickly and accurately. And he's got a good listen. He's blessed with great vision. That's the thing I keep coming back to you with is he sees and he has a mind that is decisive with decision making. So, for the young guys out there, kids that are trying to be quarterbacks, nobody works harder at it. Nobody studies more than he does. So, he's blessed with this, but he also works tremendously hard at the job.
Let's go to Nate Taylor. Go ahead, Nate.
Andy, I have two questions for you. Several guys have mentioned that even as you adjust this camp to keep everybody safe, it's still a rigorous, fast-paced, camp. I'm wondering, how do you feel like you've been able to sort of define camp and refine it so that guys always feel like they're working constantly during practice? And then secondly, because of your tight end situation right now, Nick Keiser's getting a lot of reps alongside Travis Kelce. This is his second year in the system. Just what have you seen from him so far that if he is asked to be in that role on opening night, that you guys feel comfortable with what he's given you?
Yeah, so Nick's doing a good job. He's getting better every day. He's a smart kid, tough kid. He's got a good mentor there with Trav, so he gets to see it done the right way. And so I'm asking all those guys, just try to get yourself better every day, work through it. We ask a lot out of that position, both in the run game and the pass game. And if you're not focused in every day that you come out and discipline, then you're going to take a step backwards. So they've done that. They've done a good job with it. Nick being one of them there that's I think is really working hard at getting himself where he's one of the guys.
Let's go to Matt Derrick. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Coach. Rick Gosselin wrote a piece this week making the case for Mike Holmgren for the Hall of Fame, and I know you're supportive of Mike going in. Just curious, what would be your pitch to make for Mike being a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, he kind of raised me in the business of the National Football League. So I'd tell you, at the time, I go, man, I have a hard time believing anybody does it better. And now I've been a head coach for a couple of years, and I still feel the same way. I mean, he was phenomenal. The way he handled the players and management and us as coaches. I didn't think nobody that I've been around has done it better than he did. So he just had a good way about him. He's brilliant. And there's two of the three of them that are in the Hall of Fame. Right? That strong triangle that we had, Ron Wolf and Brett Favre, and we need the other part of that to really make it whole.
Let's go to Pete Sweeney. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, Coach, question about McCole Hardman. He's somebody last year, and I know that play design is a good part of this, but just eye-popping, yards per reception, yards per target, and he's on a very talented team that only has one football. So what is the message to him as he continues to grow and maintaining maybe his desire to be a little bit more involved in the offense?
No, well, he's coming in the right frame of mind. He worked his tail off in the offseason. He's working hard now. He understands all that, but he keeps working. And, getting opportunities. He had a couple great snaps today, and listen, he was learning last year, and now it's fit in. But he's in a group that have guys that can play. D-Rob's another one that probably doesn't get the ball enough, right? But who's very worthy of it. But again, there, like you said, there is one ball, and they understand it, and we kind of check our egos at the door, and we roll the best we can, and keep it fast and furious. So that's how they've handled. But I've been pleased with McCole and how he's going about his job.
Let's go to Herbie. Go ahead, Herbie.
Hey, Coach, welcome back from the break. Two quick questions here for you. As a follow-up to Nate's questions on the tight ends, obviously you've got Ricky Seals-Jones and Deion Yelder currently working off with the trainers. How comfortable are you with the current depth at tight end ahead of the regular season? And then lastly, it looks like you had Marcus Kemp out there today. I'm curious, what were the corresponding moves to bring Kemp back?
Yeah, so I'm okay with the tight end situation as long as we keep growing. And Herbie, about the break, that's almost as bad as me saying times yours twice, but that's okay. There's not much of a break yesterday, Herbie, unless you're counting lunch. I had lunch. That was good, right? So, but listen, Marcus, having him back is great. He's a great kid, and I'm so glad that he's back now because he was playing the best football he'd ever played since we've had him here when he got hurt, and it was a shame that happened, and now he's getting a chance to come back. It looks like he's worked his tail off. We worked him out yesterday, and he did a great job with it. So he needs to get himself into football shape as he goes, but he took some reps today and did a nice job with it, and we'll just see how it goes. But we need depth at that position. You know that they're in the secondary because they do quite a little bit of running.
Looks like we've got three more hands up. Let's go Steve, Seren, and then Nate to close it out. Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, good morning, Andy. With no preseason games, as you guys ramp up to full speed game-like situations, would you have a number of guys that are trying to go all out full speed to make the team? Is there a message, or will there be a message to keep your key guys safe?
Yeah, well, we always try to do that because, you can be a great coach if you don't have your players. I mean, we're all in it together. So we try to keep bodies off the ground, do those things that are important, play hard and play fast. But try to, we're not taking cheap shots on each other. We're not doing that. We're trying to stay away from collisions on the back end, bodies on the ground, with the bigs and that. So, as long as, if you just watch our veterans practice, they kind of know how to do it. So I tell the young guys that, see how they do it. They're moving like crazy, but you don't see guys flopping around on the ground.
Let's go to Seren. Go ahead, Seren.
Coach, I'm curious, kind of on your the subject of your secondary, Tyrann Mathieu and his ability to do so many things, to cover the slot, to play center field, to do all that. I'm just curious, for you as an offensive guy, when a player like that, what kind of challenges does it present? And with the conversation about Breland, how much does he help cover up when you are down a couple of guys? Just offensively, your view of it, but then defensively, maybe what he brings for Spags.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're using Tyrann in a couple different spots, but he easily could play corner. Not that we're doing that, but he has that kind of coverage ability, right? So when a guy comes in to play that position outside, he knows exactly what that guy has to do to work in that spot, and he's able to communicate with him. And he does that quite a bit. I mean, you hear him out there talking, and he knows everything that's going on. He's got a full understanding of what Spags wants. He's really an extension of Spags on the field. And for Steve, that becomes so important to have that guy. And so he's able to kind of get everything right in the secondary. Plus, he's got great instincts at the safety position, nickel position. He just knows how to do that. And he has great anticipation, very, very football aware on things. So sharp kid.
Let's go to Nate to close it out. Go ahead, Nate.
Hey, Andy, just wanted to follow up. Over the years, just what have you identified that ensures that guys practice hard in training camp so that they can be prepared for opening night? Just what have you sort of found that makes sure you get the maximum effort for guys during training camp?
Yeah, well, first, Nate, I mean, normally if guys practice fast, they normally stay relatively healthy. I mean, it's when somebody's not doing that and then somebody trips over somebody, falls down, and then you got a problem. You know, I mean, that over the years, you see those things happen. So it's important that the guys are moving and trying to move at the same speed. And then it gets you prepared. We don't condition after practice. That's not what we're doing. We're not lining up and running sprints. So I ask them, listen, condition during practice. We'll keep you watered down. So we're not playing, the no water game or anything. We try to keep them hydrated and ready to go. But we know in games, you got to be ready. No more important than this year. I mean, you got to go into a game and without any pregame or a preseason game. So you got to keep your tempo up and get yourself sharp. And the guys believe that. So, they fly around, they remind each other, which is important. And so the coaches don't really have to do it. The players can give each other a heads up on, let's go. I mean, it's time to roll. You're a little tired. Let's go.
Coach, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Hang tight.
Big Red with the big news of the day. I just figured out it's August the 19th.
Okay.
No way in Week 17 when I was calling the game and saw one Thornhill go down against the Chargers that I think on August the 19th he would be on this field. That's the big news. Now let's keep it in perspective. He was just doing individuals, but he was on the field in pads, Matt. That is the biggest and best news the Chiefs Kingdom could have on August the 19th.
When I saw Juan Thornhill shortly after his injury, you could see it in his eyes. I mean, he was going to make sure he attacked this, and he was back as soon as possible. And you're right. I mean, 8 months to be back in limited drills is really impressive. And how good was Juan Thornhill last season? Starts all 16 games, 3 interceptions. He was on the Pro Football Focus all-rookie team. And also, opposing quarterbacks combined for a 40.9 passer rating on passes of 20 yards or longer last season against the Chiefs, third best rate in the league. Juan Thornhill playing center field at free safety was a big part of that. So we'll see how he progresses here in this camp, but the idea that he could be on his way back is really exciting.
Matt, the other image I have of Juan is after Super Bowl 54. It was such a euphoric state in that locker room, and Juan was just sitting by himself in the locker because he knew he wanted to be a part of it, and he was a part of it. It's like, Juan, you were part of this, man, but he knew he wasn't on the field with those guys, and that, I think, propelled him to getting back here on the field today. We're going to have an exclusive interview with Tano Passanio, who's had a great start to this camp. But as we do on every Training Camp Live, brought to you by Community America, we also look at our position breakdown, and it's a presentation of DirecTV. We want to say thank you to all of the healthcare personnel and what they've done over the last 5 months with the COVID pandemic, because they do the work many times you don't see. The reason I say that is this position group, other than the offensive line, is probably the least appreciated in the game of football. It's the defensive tackles, the guys that grind inside to help this football team. And it's a group that made a meteoric rise last year in this defense that ended up being, as you had said, one of the best in the NFL in the last half of the season.
And you're totally right. You look at this group, they're not glamorous. You don't get a lot of stats as a defensive tackle. And I love stats. There's just not a lot of them on them. They're not, they're pass rushers, but they're not always getting those numbers. They're filling up lanes. They're stopping the run. But in the end, these guys are integral to your football team. And you're right. How we saw this defense get better toward the end of the year last year, really from week 11 on, these defensive tackles were a big reason why.
Yeah, there's some exceptions to that. Of course, Aaron Donald of the Rams is the valedictorian. He'll just wreck a whole game and get stats. Another guy is Chris Jones, and he's the first guy we want to look at in this position group. Chris is missing. Coach told you he's missed the last several practices with a groin injury, but he's expected to be back, not expected to be serious. But when you look at Chris and his marks, Pro Football Focus had him graded out as a 77, a pass rush of 90, which is terrific. But you have to look no further than Super Bowl 54. The last 11 snaps of San Francisco, he himself directly altered 3 of those 11 snaps.
Absolutely. And what can you say about Chris Jones? Just like you said, one of the best defensive tackles and just defensive players in general in all of football. Gotten better every single year. Since entering the NFL, only Donald and Fletcher Cox have more total pressures than Chris Jones at defensive tackle. And regardless of position, over the last 2 years where he's really blossomed, 5th in quarterback hits, 6th in sacks, and 7th in tackles for loss. And Mitch, as you said, in the postseason, he was Pro Football Focus's 3rd best postseason pass rusher of the decade. Behind only Von Miller and James Harrison, 2 pretty good ones. So he can play defensive tackle. He can play defensive end. He can play quarterback, I think, if they wanted him to. He can do anything for this team. He's an absolute beast, and I'm so glad he's back in a Chiefs uniform this year.
We get caught up in sacks, but if he goes back to that 18 year where he had to set an NFL record with 11 straight weeks with a sack, that'd be nice. But there's more than sacks for Chris Jones's game. All right, the next group of this DT group would be Derek Nottie. Now, Derek was back today and limited. Coach told you that as well. He's been battling with an ankle injury. But I thought Derek Nottie took big steps last year. When you look at what he did, 698 snaps during the season, he also had some big plays. Let me give you another one in Super Bowl 54. Mostert gets a gain of 5 on the 48-second 3-and-out after the Chiefs get within 4. That play could go for 25. Would it not for Derek Nottie making a play? Derek Nottie helps this team win.
Absolutely. He's really grown over the last 2 years into one of the better young run stuffers in the NFL. And you mentioned all those snaps last year. I think, one of the best abilities, especially in the NFL, and particularly at defensive tackle, is availability. And 27 starts for Derek Nottie over the last 2 seasons, all 16 games last year. Just one of the strongest guys on this team. Tree trunks for legs out there. And like I said, just really growing into a really good run defender. Solid player. And I look for him, maybe any young player, to develop some more consistency in his game as he's going forward. But really good player. Looking for him to take that next step to maybe a great player this season.
Our next player in our position breakdown brought to you by DirecTV, the defensive tackle, a guy that maybe flipped the season last year for the Chiefs and did it in subtle ways. Again, doing the dirty work in the defensive tackle position, Mike Pennell. About mid-October is when they picked him up. And Mike Pennell, in those last 6 games, was terrific, and in the playoffs, just plug in the middle.
And you have to talk about Brett Veach with this, because when you have a need at defensive tackle in the middle of the season, it's not easy to find a guy that can come in and fill a hole for you. And Brett Veach did that and more. Finds Mike Pennell. He is a diamond in the rough for this team. Like you said, came on in late October and plays in all but one game the rest of the year. Incredible stuff. And from week 8 through the end of the regular season, he was the 16th best run defender among defensive tackles according to Pro Football Focus. And you find that guy on the street? I mean, that's unbelievable to find Mike Pennell in this group. He just really improved the run defense on the stretch as this team got better. And also just a great locker room guy. I mean, when you see Mike Pennell, you just have to smile. This was kind of a tough stretch for this team, facing some adversity. And I think having him both on the field as a run stuffer and in the locker room just as a great all-around glue guy for this team was really big.
Pennell 7-1 when he played for the Chiefs last year. And the one game that he missed that you talked about, he was a coach's decision inactive, and the Chiefs lost to the Tennessee Titans. In that last time the Chiefs lost, that was on November the 10th. Next is one of our 2 St. Louisans in this group, and it's Colin Saunders. Colin is getting a ton of reps out here. We always talk about we're going to get to that in a second when we do our 5 observations. We always look at our upgrades and opportunities, but Colin's getting exactly that with the injury to Chris Jones.
And that's exciting. We saw him flash a lot last season. We kind of people called him the Aaron Donald of the FCS before he came to the Chiefs. And you kind of saw a little bit of that last year. The jump from Western Illinois to the NFL is a big one. That's hard. And we saw early in the season he was inactive for several games because he's still trying to learn what the NFL is all about. But when Chris Jones got hurt last season, all of a sudden he jumps in, and we saw that he could hold his own. He looked good out there. 54 snaps against the Houston Texans early in the year and looked the part. And then great hustle against the Green Bay Packers, sacking Aaron Rodgers. Pretty good first sack for him, getting Aaron Rodgers. So looked good. He was primarily a rotational guy, once Chris came back, but still the reps that he got, he looked good out there. And like you said, after a full year in the system now, you can come here with a foundation of last year, trying to build on that. And while we want Chris Jones back as soon as possible, the fact that he's getting these reps right now with the ones is only going to help his development moving forward.
Yeah, the numbers at this position are always interesting. Usually 4 kept on the 53-man roster. But you always want to keep the other guys around because depth at this position is paramount. We saw it last year. And the next 3 we're going to lump together. We got another St. Louisan in here. In fact, Tershawn Wharton is in this group. If you're a fan of Missouri S&T, right, in Rolla, Missouri, he's trying to become the 3rd S&T player, the old Missouri Mines. Great school, by the way, if you're into engineering and metallurgy. But this group, these 3 guys, Devereaux Lawrence, Braxton Hoyt, and Tershawn Wharton, the other 3 in the room, you want to keep depth at this spot because you never know, because of injuries there, who you need to plug and play well into the season.
And Devereaux Lawrence is a guy with some experience at depth there. I mean, on the Chiefs practice squad for the latter half of the year last year, but he played 11 games for the Cleveland Browns and over 200 snaps. So he has some experience. He did some things, some solid outings. So, I like Devereaux Lawrence there. And Braxton Hoyt, a fellow Mississippi State Bulldog for Chris Jones on this defensive line. Another UDFA from last year that stuck around on the practice squad and knows the system a bit. So the Chiefs will see what they have in him in this camp. And Tershawn Wharton, just a man among boys at Missouri S&T. 58 tackles for loss, 35.5 sacks, and 11 forced fumbles during his career there. He's a project right now from a small school, but he athletically looks the part.
Again, one of 2 St. Louisans in this 7-man defensive tackle room. a huge key to the season. And we're going to get into this group a little bit more in the 5 observations, because let me tell you where it gets real important when you look at the first 4 games of the Chiefs' schedule. These guys are right at the crosshairs of what will take to be successful in those games. We're going to hear from Tano Passanio very shortly with an exclusive interview. Again, the big news of the day, if you joined us, Juan Thornhill was back on the field. And just take it with a grain of salt here a little bit. He was watching in walkthroughs. He was participating with the DBs in position group. Anyway, Juan Thornhill back in pads and on the field. It was great to see it.
And that's just a big step. I mean, when you're coming back from a torn ACL, well, you have to have checkpoints here. And yeah, we don't have him in team drills yet. You want to see that. But just putting the pads on, getting a feel for that, running around, catching the football, doing individual drills, that's part of this process. And to have that already, only 8 months after he tears his ACL against the LA Chargers, very exciting.
While we're waiting for Tano, let's go now into our 5 observations. Again, Community America, the sponsors of our Training Camp Live shows throughout training camp. We want to keep you right here, whether you're at work or at home or working at home. A lot of people are doing that, obviously. But we want to give you the vibe of what's going on here at the University of Kansas Training Complex through training camp. Our 5 observations start with that defensive tackle group. And let's just take the defensive line. Well, let's just take the DTs. Play on words here. DT, dictating terms. Look at the first 4 games of the schedule, starting with the Houston Texans, then the Chargers, then the Ravens, and then the Patriots. What do all 4 of those teams have in common? They want to dictate terms at the line of scrimmage in the run game, including the design quarterback runs of Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson. That puts pressure on the defensive tackles, especially, but the whole defensive line, to dictate terms on that defensive line of scrimmage.
And that's very important. All those teams want to run the ball, and like you said, all have mobile quarterbacks. You think about just the running backs as well. The Texans with David Johnson, kind of curious how he looks this year, but if he can recapture the form that he had with the Arizona Cardinals, they're going to run him a lot. Austin Eckler with the Chargers, and of course the Ravens run the ball more than anybody. So controlling the line of scrimmage and winning in the trenches will be so big early in the year when you really want to get off to a good start. The Chiefs allowed the 2nd fewest rushing yards in the NFL last season from Week 11 on. And don't forget the performance against Derrick Henry in the conference championship game. So we've seen that this team can stop the run. They can be physical at the line of scrimmage. We've seen them do it already. Now it's important just carrying that into this season, particularly early on.
And again, all 4 quarterbacks that you're going to face, if Cam Newton's a starter in New England, which we expect, or Tyrod Taylor with the Chargers, all 4 can run, will run, and some of those have design runs for those guys. So that just adds one more runner when you have 10 guys blocking 11, and those defensive tackles have got to win their job. Let's just one more spot here. Last year against the Colts, they had the ball 37 minutes and 15 seconds. Did Indianapolis. Chiefs lose it. The Texans had the ball for 39 minutes and 48 seconds. 83 plays to 47 for the Chiefs. I haven't seen that disparity in my brief 26 years in the NFL. And then in Green Bay, 33 minutes, 13 seconds with the ball with the Packers. Again, dictating terms. If they got the ball, Pat Mahomes doesn't.
And time of possession is a weird stat. It's hard to kind of look at how that affects games sometimes because the Chiefs score so fast. But those games with the eye test, and you combine that with the time of possession test stat, you can kind of see how the Chiefs lost those games. And it was lost in the trenches on the line of scrimmage. Coming out early on, dominating the line of scrimmage with these defensive tackles and on the offensive side of the ball too will be very important to getting off to a good start.
We started the show, Matt, with saying this is a day 1 of the 6-day grind. It leads us to our 2nd observation, and that is surviving the fire. And what about the rookies and what we mean with this?
So this is kind of a follow-up to our point from a few shows ago about how Andy Reid is intentionally overloading these rookies with information. And I'm thinking about 3 rookies in particular, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Willie Gay Jr., and L'Jarius Sneed. They're getting a ton of reps out here and kind of being thrown in that metaphorical fire, if you will. And, you know, for whatever reason, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously, he's the one that's getting a lot of reps at running back with the ones. Willie Gay, he's getting a lot of reps with the second team at linebacker, and we'll likely see him on defense at some point during this season. And L'Jarius Sneed, just because of injuries in the secondary, he's getting a lot of reps out there. So how do these guys respond to that? They didn't have rookie minicamp. They didn't have OTAs. They didn't have all those things. This is their first chance at really being out there physically on a football field with the Chiefs. How did they respond to that demand? And I really liked what Willie Gay said earlier this summer. He said, sure, it might look like a disadvantage for us rookies, but I'm going into this thinking it could be a positive because if I can come into this camp, if I can absorb this information right away and come out of it stronger, I'll be set up for the rest of my career. I'll have a leg up on my peers for the rest of my career. So I love that attitude. You know, it's not always perfect out there, but these guys are grinding and they're getting better and they're maximizing every single rep.
It leads us now to our third point of our 5 observations, and that is volume with velocity. Okay, we know that Andy Reid piles on. It's not just the rookies now. He piles on with the veterans, but he does it at tempo. And one of the things that he has done, he alluded to it during his press conference today when he was asked about conditioning. Andy Reid doesn't stop practice and run 40-yard gassers. He doesn't do that. But within his practice, and all the great coaches that I have seen, whether it's the college level, the pro level, and even other sports like soccer or basketball, they condition within their practice. It's more game-like, and that's what you have here. In the next 6 days in this grind, it's taking in all this volume, but doing it at a high speed and also conditioning your game.
Sure, and Tedrick Thompson, a safety we'll talk about here in a minute, he called this a workaholic camp, and in a good way. He mentioned, it's up-tempo, it's fast. Every minute is maximized, and that's what this is all about. For new players on this roster, you're learning basically at full speed. Walkthroughs are over. This is full-on camp here. Guys like Colecchio Simile, Mike Rimmers on the offensive line, they're taking in a lot of information and executing it at a very fast pace, and it's who can keep up with that. Like I said, Tedrick Thompson calling this a workaholic camp. Who can benefit from taking advantage of every single rep? And I think ultimately, like you said, is a reflection of Coach Reid and the culture he's built here.
Yeah, let's keep in mind, why does he bulk it up right now? He likes to get off to a fast start. He has won 11 straight games in September. That's crazy. You mentioned the left side of the offensive line. I'm so impressed right now with Colecchio Simile and then Mike Rimmers because Eric Fisher's missed the last couple days of camp within the concussion protocol. But Rimmers is at that left tackle spot. So now you have a new left guard, left tackle, volume with velocity, and it's important for those guys to capture it and work together.
And we've seen Mike Rimmers play at a lot of different positions along the offensive line through this camp already, getting some work at tackle right now. When we signed him, it was kind of the idea he could maybe be that swing guy. So the fact that he's getting a lot of reps out here at different positions is really an advantage, I think, going into the season where it's a long year. If you have injuries along the offensive line, Mike Rimmers will go back to August 19th and remember when he was playing tackle out here on the first team and draw on that to succeed in December for whatever we know.
You need a swing tackle. And Rimmers can play both guard and tackle, but if he can capture that on the left tackle, right tackle, fill in, or the Chiefs will go tackle over tackle. When doing the play-by-play, I'll mention that because they go unbalanced. So that third tackle position is way more important than people think. Our next point, and it's tight at tight ends. Ricky Seals-Jones was injured a couple days ago. He was working out today. It was good to see. But that left the Chiefs with just 2 tight ends on the roster. Well, wait a minute. They did sign another one, and he's a San Francisco 49er. So it made me go back and look at my charts of Super Bowl 54. He's on there. He just was inactive for a Super Bowl and was never active for the 49ers. But Daniel Helm out of Duke, a tight end, signed. But now the Chiefs have 3 tight ends. We're talking about the grind. That's a lot of repetitions for this tight end group.
And Deion Yelder too, but he's been injured throughout most of this camp. So you're really looking at Nick Keiser and Daniel Helm. It's like, all right, guys, here's an opportunity. This is an opportunity maybe they didn't think they'd have this early on in camp. But when there's injuries, it's what can you do to take advantage of this situation? Grand Valley State for Nick Keiser was around this offense last year on the practice squad, so he kind of knows what things are about. He's been around here, so perhaps he has a bit of an advantage there. But Coach said that they're growing every day, and that's all you can hope for with these guys. They're young players, but they both have talent and ability. It'll be an interesting battle to see how it plays out here. But for one of those 2 guys, there could be a huge opportunity here with the Chiefs.
Again, we're expecting an exclusive interview with Tano Passigno, the Chiefs' defensive end, defensive tackle, special teams guy. We're going to ask him. We saw him in kickoff coverage today running down the field. He looked like, I don't know, like a wildebeest that was sprinting. It was awesome. I mean, his athletic ability, but we're hopefully going to have Tano here in a little bit. But again, a new tight end, Daniel Helm, as the Chiefs dealing with some injuries at that spot with Deion Yelder and Ricky Seals-Jones, both injured at this point. Opportunity. It seems like we're going to do this like every observation we have in these shows and our 5 observations. That is, we're always upgrading, like your phone or your computers always needing upgrades. We're going to do another one, and that's Opportunity 4.0. In this time, we talked about the grind. Who is getting a real shot to impress the coaches and maybe step up of where people thought they would be going into camp? Who do you have on your mind today?
Today is Tedrick Thompson. I mentioned him a bit earlier. He's a guy that comes over from the Seattle Seahawks. And just a few years ago, in 2018, he stepped in for Earl Thomas, who was injured for the rest of the season, and he played really, really well there. Still only 25 years old. last season for him was kind of a lost season. Didn't play probably to his ability early on, and then got hurt, had a shoulder injury, missed the rest of the year. Well, he's on the Chiefs now. Brett Veach picked him up, and he's been getting a lot of reps out here at safety. Really curious to see what he can do for this team. He's one of those guys that kind of a reclamation project. Maybe you're still young. Can you come into a new situation and really unleash your full potential? I've liked what I've seen from Tedrick Thompson so far.
Yeah, you can see his athleticism. We talk about the athleticism of the safety group. We mentioned on that a couple shows ago because they can all do different things, and they can cover the question during Andy Reid's news conference about, hey, could the Honey Badger play corner? Well, yeah, he could. We don't put him out there, but he's got the skill to do it. But Sorensen, we can see that along with Armani Watts and others. We know about Thornhill, but Thompson seems to fit that. He only had 6 games last year with the Seahawks, as you alluded to, because he had hamstring problems. But in those 6 games, Matt, he had 2 interceptions in 6 games. Mm-hmm. It tells you if he has the ability to play a 16-game schedule and even filling in as a 4th safety, that you could get some big-time plays from him.
That's where the depth in this team really comes into play. If you can have a 4th safety like Tedrick Thompson, if he can really show us maybe what he showed in 2018 in Seattle, I mean, that's really exciting for this DB group. This DB group does not get the respect they deserve around the league, and I think at signings like picking up guys like Tedrick Thompson who can chip in during the year, that will really earn that respect here throughout the season.
We're going to call an audible. We're expecting now Anthony Hitchens to come to the stage. He is big for this team because we know he's Hitman Hitchens. All you Iowa Hawkeye fans love him. But even more than that, he wears the green dot. So he is essentially, on most of the snaps, is the Patrick Mahomes of the defense because he is the one guy who's allowed, with the green dot on his helmet, to take the calls in from Steve Spagnuolo and relate that to his 10 best friends on the field.
He's the commander of this defense. That position is so important. It's so much more than just making tackles. It's making sure everyone's lined up where they're supposed to be. You're in charge of that defense. And looking forward to Anthony Hitchens coming into his 3rd year with the Chiefs, how he can build on last year. I thought he looked really good last year at times. His first year was kind of an adjustment period for him. Last year looked really good, and looking forward to seeing what he can do this season, both as a tackler, as a linebacker, and as the leader of this defense.
And guess who wanted to be here with us on stage to talk about the defensive tackles? It would be Anthony Hitchens, because talk about his best friends. His really, really, really best friends are those guys in front of him to keep everybody off him, because the key to an offensive lineman in this league is not only block you, but get to the second level. And when you get to the second level, that means Hitch has to deal with those guys. He would rather have all those guys we mentioned during our 5 observations deal with the big, so he's free to flow and make tackles.
And we see that. When he's on free release and he's going straight after the quarterback, how good does he look? I mean, the guy has great speed, great burst from the linebacker position. And you're right, everything works together there. That's where this defense really came together toward the end of last season, is it wasn't so much X's and O's, it was guys knowing what guys are thinking. They know how guys will move. And Alex Okafor spoke about that a few days ago, the caveats of a defense. And that's kind of where I'm seeing this defense, where it can grow coming into this season, is now that the guys know each other, they know what each other's going to do. You already know the scheme. You're not worried about that. You're playing with your teammates out there, and Anthony Hitchens is right in the middle of that.
Made one of the most explosive plays, and again, I know I'm harping on these defensive explosive plays, but I do think that's where the Chiefs take a big giant step forward. It's 13-6. Pat Mahomes has left the game. The stadium in Denver is excited, thinking, yes, they're down 7, but you know what? One quirky play, and all of a sudden it's tied at 13. What happens? A blitz and a sack strip by Anthony Hitchens that allowed a fumble return for a touchdown, and it just took that stadium out of the game. It was 20-6 Chiefs, but it was Hitchens that made that play. And so he is capable of making an explosive play like that, even when he's not blitzing. But that one, he did a great job in knocking the ball out.
If people try to tell you that momentum doesn't exist in sports, it exists. I think we saw it on that play. You're so right. I mean, the Chiefs couldn't have been more down, at least from a fan perspective, watching all that happen when Patrick Mahomes goes out. But the defense, they didn't let it get them down. They went out there and made a huge play, and that lifted up Matt Moore, too, throughout that game. You can see how the team all works together there and how momentum can build on itself. Because if things are going poorly there, if the Broncos score on that drive, you don't know how that game ends. You don't know how that season ends. But the fact that you get a huge defensive play there from Anthony Hitchens leads to a score, and then all of a sudden Matt Moore comes in, tears it up, it changes everything. So big defensive plays like that from guys like Anthony Hitchens are critical as you're trying to have a full team effort that ultimately wins a Super Bowl.
Yeah, the other thing, he gives a baseline, I think, to this defense. We know there's some alpha dogs on this defense, Frank Clark and Tyrann Mathieu. And they're there as well in building that foundation. But like the steady dude who just like keeps everything right here is Anthony Hitchens, and he's perfectly placed because he's right in the middle of the field. He's got those bigs in front of him, and he's got those studs behind him, but he's there to give a baseline defensively to this team today, tomorrow, and the next day.
And you mentioned Frank Clark and Tyrann Mathieu. That's where at every level you kind of have a coach on this defense, which is so big. And to have Anthony Hitchens right in the middle of that, and like I said, the fact that he's in this defense for a third year now, and with Steve Spagnuolo for 2 years now, he knows what he's doing out there. He's the commander of these guys in the middle of the defense, and that is so big to have him now with a second year under his belt in Steve Spagnuolo's scheme.
Again, to recap, Andy Reid announced at the beginning of our show that Juan Thornhill back on the field today, limited basis, but still back on the field. Chris Jones missed again today. Frank Clark battling a virus. But it was also getting guys back today. It was good to see Antonio Hamilton, the free agent pickup of the New York Giants, back at the corner position. Also to see some guys return on both sides of the ball. But again, with 3 straight days in pads, you need all the troops you can find. But to get Thornhill back today, I think is going to give a lift not only to the Kingdom but to this whole team.
And you mentioned Antonio Hamilton. That's a guy I want to talk about really fast. Stud on special teams last year for the New York Giants. According to Pro Football Focus, he was the 6th best special teamer in the NFL last year. So that's huge for Dave Toub's group. But I'm curious to see what he can do on defense for the Chiefs this year. Only really had a few reps last year at defense for the Giants, but in Week 17, he started and played the majority of the game and looked really good. So if you're trying to develop some DBs out here, it's not just draft picks like L'Jarius Sneed. It's also guys like Antonio Hamilton. How can he take that next step and be a defensive player for you? I've been excited when he's been on the field. He's looked pretty good. Great speed and great awareness out there. Excited about Antonio Hamilton on this defense.
Offensively, we saw continued the rotation at running back because Darrell Williams, we talked about his importance to this team, and then also seeing Darwin Thompson getting some reps as well. Because it's the way Andy Reid does it. Like it's not like a Todd Gurley approach where he's going to be that's it and that's what you got. I mean, Andy has always had a mix and match at that running back position, no matter who the personnel group is.
And keeping fresh legs is so important. So if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the guy, you invest a first-round pick in him, he's this team's starting running back. But that doesn't mean that he's going to get 400 carries. I mean, you have to have guys like DeAndre Washington, Darwin Thompson, and Darrell Williams in there as well. Elijah McGuire maybe even. Taking some of the load off of him. And that's what's so exciting about this running back group is all of those guys can bring you something. They can all do something, and they've all had success in this league before. I mean, Darrell Williams made some huge plays for this team last season before he got hurt, was really starting to come into his own. And DeAndre Washington was kind of a hybrid, could do a little bit of everything for the Oakland Raiders last year. He joins this team now. So excited about this running back group, can do a lot of different things, and I think will help Clyde Edwards-Helaire as he becomes a starter for this team moving forward. They'll help keep his legs fresh as the season progresses.
We also reviewed earlier the defensive tackle group and dictating terms of the line of scrimmage. One of the things that fans think, wow, this is boring, I'm going to go watch the passing game, is the 9-on-7 inside run game. It's part of every padded practice. We saw Anthony Sherman today do what he does best, and that's just like he sprung the run to immortality in Super Bowl 54, but they were working with Anthony Sherman today a lot on lead plays, pulls, but it's just easy to overlook the impact when you have a lead blocker like that with leverage and with power and what he can do in the short yardage passing game.
He is the ultimate unsung hero, isn't he? I mean, people say the fullback is dead in the NFL. Come watch Chiefs practice. Andy Reid can find things for the fullback to do. What I love about Anthony Sherman is he's been here through the entirety of Andy Reid's tenure here. And he's been there. He's seen this team grow. No one knows the offense at this point better than a guy like Anthony Sherman. Maybe Travis Kelce. He's been here for the same amount of time. But yeah, to see the little dirty work plays that he does in this practice and how they'll translate to games later on. I mean, you said it. Damian Williams run to immortality. Anthony Sherman was right in the middle of that. And that starts in camps like this.
Blocked 2 guys, by the way, with that effort and has never missed a game during his time here in Kansas City. 7 years, every game. Again, our training camp live show brought to you by Community America. We'll be back on Friday as well. Another padded practice here as, again, the grind starts in preparing for the Houston Texans. And if you joined us late, Juan Thornhill back in practice after his ACL injury in Week 17 against the against the Chargers, but trying to get ready for the Houston Texans. One final point here, too, is we really haven't talked about the specialists much, and we're going to get into that in the next several shows. But Harrison Butker's been impressive. And today he was showing his ability like he did in Super Bowl 54. If I have to hammer it out of the park, I will. You want a touchback? I'll do it. You want me to pooch it, put it at the 2 like a punter should do, would do? Harrison Butker continues to hone his game. That, and they were working on some long field goals. The strength of his leg, the accuracy, and learning how to play and thinking like Dave Tobe thinks is a major part of Harrison Butker's future, and especially in the near future of 2020.
What a wild ride for Harrison Butker over the last several years. I remember his first game on Monday Night Football back in 2017, gets picked up off the Carolina Panthers practice squad, comes in and hits a game winner. Then all of a sudden, from there on out, he has the most points through his first 3 years as a pro in NFL history. I mean, the guy is just reliable. You know what you're going to get from him. And he has gotten better and better every single season. And we saw in this offseason, obviously, he couldn't be at the facility, but he was at a local high school kicking like a 75-yard field goal. So you hopefully never see that kind of thing actually in a game. But you know he has the ability to do it, and he was working on little things all offseason to get even better. So Harrison Butker, to see him develop and grow as a kicker over the last several years, I mean, it's no hyperbole to say he's one of the best kickers in all of football right now, and he's only getting better.
Absolutely. You see a lot of kickers in this league that have power, but he has power and the ability to place it and finesse it. That is a real strength. Well, thanks for joining us. Hey, we're going to have Tano in a future show here, so if you're a Tano Passanio fan like I am, I'm leading that charge. We're going to have him in one of our shows coming up. And on Friday, we'll be back right here with another padded practice. But a really good day of work, as again the grind keeps rolling here, Matt. But overall, a good day today. All 3 phases, really. We saw all 3 phases in a long practice. And they'll go again tomorrow, and then we'll be back live on Friday morning.
Guys looked fresh. Guys had energy. Guys looked really good out here. Like we said at the beginning of our show, this is when camp is really hitting its stride. We have pads the next 2 days. Guys are really getting out there, hitting each other, getting better, ready for the season. We're going to find out who's going to make this team here in the next several days.
He's Matt McMullen. Great follow. Follow all the stuff he does, like 1,000 things. And keep in mind, to dictate terms is big for this team. Do not overlook those bigs in that middle of the defense. Thanks for joining us on Training Camp Live, brought to you by Community America. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs. We'll be back on Friday morning.